Yep, this is happening. Greetings folks, meet the HP Omen DC1052NR. I had covered this chassis about a year ago, and it had the 8750H and a 1060. I bought it from Micro Center for $1,000. This one here, for $200 more, you're getting one heck of a better machine in nearly every single aspect. So let's start with what is inside this particular laptop. Inside we have the i7 9750H, the RTX 2060. We have 16 gigabytes of Samsung memory running in dual channel at 2666. For storage we have the Samsung NVMe 512 gigabyte. There's also an empty 2.5-inch storage, so feel free to fill that as you see fit. The network interface card is the new Wi-Fi 6. It is the AX200. The battery is a 70 watt-hour unit. Expect anywhere between 3.5 to 5 hours unplugged, and the power supply is 200 watts. Now the reason for the shorter runtime with a 70 watt-hour battery is simple. This laptop does not feature NVIDIA Optimus, so it is always running on the dedicated GPU. From a performance standpoint and from a usability standpoint, that means you can treat this like an actual desktop. You're going to have a lot more options in the NVIDIA control panel. You will have a very nice gaming experience with this, as well as being able to enable fast sync. With the exception of the improved battery life with Optimus, there's a lot more pros than there are cons with a laptop designed this way. Now, unfortunately, there is no G-Sync because this panel has not been certified from NVIDIA. More on the display shortly. The laptop weighs in at around 5.3 pounds, and the overall build quality is mostly plastic with an aluminum deck. The I/O on the left-hand side has a USB 3.1, separate headphone and mic. The card reader, okay, not the fastest, but at least the card will insert itself all the way into the slot. Makes putting this in and out of a laptop bag nice and convenient, and it will not snag. The rear features a LAN port, a USB 3.1, an HDMI, a MIDI display port. Are you ready for this? A 4-lane Thunderbolt 3, and of course your lock. Over on the right-hand side is a single USB 3.1 and a power port. Opening with one hand is fairly easy with minimal liftoff, and it powers on rapidly. Unfortunately, the touchpad is small, uses Synaptics drivers, and is plastic, but it does have good dedicated buttons. The keyboard has an easy-to-use layout with a number pad. The deck, of course, is aluminum, and the keyboard temperatures during the heaviest loads are between 40 and 50 degrees Celsius. Now the display here is a Full HD IPS panel by LG, part number LDG05C0. It's the same display used in many laptops, including the Aero 15, one of the nicer 144Hz panels put in 15-inch laptops. Now this panel has not been certified for NVIDIA's G-Sync, so you should not expect that on a laptop like this. But all of these displays featuring this exact part number usually have brightness between 300 and 310 nits at 98% standard RGB and usually right around 74% Adobe RGB. This is a very pleasant panel, but it does not come factory calibrated. I do have the calibration for this in my Google Drive. Perhaps I'll leave that linked in the description below and you can install that ICC color profile. 720p webcam and microphone located at the top of the bezel. It'll do the job for Skype, not anything extravagant. The fan curve on the HP Omen has been relatively quiet. There's no way for me to demonstrate that without playing a game and ramping it up. And the keyboard doesn't really sound too bad. It's a very nice keyboard, very quiet. Well done, HP. Now the proprietary software is the Omen Command Center. This will monitor system vitals, allow for some network boosting capabilities, cover your RGB lighting where you have 3 zones and a separate zone for the WASD keys. You have your performance control center in here as well, offering comfort, default, and performance. The default and performance settings change the way the CPU and GPU behave as far as wattage goes, and it also changes the acoustics of the laptop. Your Omen is running at default settings. The 2060 will pull a maximum of 80 watts, and the CPU will settle in at around 45 watts. But when running in performance mode, the GPU will pull 90 watts, and your CPU will pull between 80 and 65 watts when it's under load by itself, and when it is loaded with the GPU, it will pull between 50 and 55 watts. It's a very strong running CPU. I like how HP has this configured right now as far as wattage is being pulled when using the default setting versus the performance setting. I do, however, wish there was a way we could max out the fan speed, because thermally on default or performance mode really doesn't change a whole lot, as the fan acoustics tend to just scale very closely with thermals. That means a bone stock machine running Battlefield 5, you're going to see CPU temperatures easily into the 90s. The GPU will max at 78 degrees Celsius. And because we're hitting a little bit of thermal throttling at this point, you're going to see the frequency average around 3.2 with wattage right around the mid-40s. Now here in Apex Legends, we're going to demonstrate the performance difference in default mode versus performance mode. It's really only worth about 5, maybe 10% at best. Here's Apex Legends in performance mode, some gameplay averaging around 80 FPS. Overall, this is pretty strong performance for a 2060. It's in line with most 2060 laptops out there. Far Cry 5, the difference between default and performance mode, once again right around 5 frames per second, with performance mode usually yielding around 90 FPS average on high settings with the HD texture pack installed. Same concept here with Rage 2, default versus performance, again only worth about 5 FPS, but per frame rate here in this title has been spectacular as well. But if you spend a little bit of time doing some performance tuning on your CPU and following my voltage curve editor on the GPU, now we can get some pretty good temperatures in Battlefield 5. I've got the voltage of the GPU at around 0.750 versus the factory 1.063, and I happen to lock the frequency in at around 1500 megahertz. Feel free to adjust this, as I was really conservative here. I could have pushed this a little bit harder. Frame rate did take a little bit of a hit. Once again, I was trying to get the best thermal performance out of here possible, but I don't think the GPU ever went over 70 degrees Celsius, and now we've got a CPU running into the 80s. Very strong performance, pulling a lot of wattage from the CPU, and I was very impressed with this level of performance in thermal plus fan acoustics on this particular laptop. Benchmarking using Cinebench 20, we're scoring over 3,000 points, and the stock Firestrike score of around 14,800 with a 16,100 physics score, but when we run this in performance mode, that's going to take a bump up to 15,600 and 16,500 on the physics score. So with a little bit of performance and thermal tuning, you can get better thermal performance out of this machine, and the acoustics, they're fantastic. At idle, it's around 32 dB, maybe 1 or 2 decibels louder than some of the best examples out there. Expect to always hear just a slight little whoosh sound from the fans, regardless of what setting you have in your Omen command center. The average gaming acoustics, however, in default mode are right around 43 to 45 dB. Pretty much class leading at this point, and the maximum decibels under performance mode were between 47 and 48 decibels, again absolutely matching the best class leading laptops out there, making this very pleasant to use acoustically. But this Bang & Olufsen audio, this thing is banging, pun intended. Onto the BIOS, press F10 to get into your BIOS, and the only fancy thing in here is the battery care function feature. Setting this to 100% will allow the laptop to drain down to 91% before charging again. Setting this to 80% will keep a charge between 76 and 80%, and setting this to 50% will keep the charge between 46 and 50%. Ultimately, some manufacturers feel this is a nice way to minimize wear and tear on your battery. So my closing thoughts are this. This is a great laptop, but not because it has the latest parts inside, including the RTX, not because it has a gorgeous 144 Hz display, not because it offers a reasonably well-equipped storage solution without compromising the battery, not because it's doing without Optimus, which is something I'm clearly a fan of, not because it has the Wi-Fi 6 or a Thunderbolt 3 port. It's because of all of those things for $1,200. Thanks for watching.